Good evening, you guys. Let's get all the engines fired up for another episode, a Friday night episode of Beholden the Truth. I am your host, Josh. So very, very happy to be with you. It's been a fantastic day. I have a number of things to share with you, but the big story tonight that we're going to be covering is obviously Donald Trump's recent arrest down in Georgia. By now, most of you have probably seen his mugshot looking pretty serious business. I gotta say, I love it. I love it. They're putting it on t-shirts, they're putting it on mugs, they're putting it on frisbees, and he's using it to his advantage, which is basically what we thought would happen. I think he even said beforehand that he was going to use it as a piece of marketing material. So none of this comes as a surprise, but we're just watching it finally happen. So it's kind of like we saw the trailer for it, and now we actually get to see the movie of Donald Trump's arrest and all the other crap that's gone along with it. So that being said, I want to make sure I get everything set up so we can have ourselves a fun session of watching this Donald Trump interview that you see behind me with Tucker Carlson a couple of nights ago. This was the same night as the GOP debate on Fox News. So we covered that debate yesterday. We sat down and watched an hour of it, and it was very entertaining, not exactly informative. Didn't really see anything that we didn't already know. That Vivek was by far, head and shoulders, the most impressive candidate on the stage. Obviously, Ron DeSantis is polling right around the same as him, but what that means is that's not a good thing for DeSantis. DeSantis has suffered a pretty significant, more than halving half of his previous polling numbers since earlier in the year. And now he is at the bottom tier next to people like Vivek Ramaswamy, who nobody even had heard their name before 1 month ago. So we watched that debate, and there was a couple of things worth calling out. A couple of things that Vivek said. He reminded us all again about Saudi Arabia being involved with 9/11, and I find it a little interesting that he continually is shooting that flare gun of misdirection of, even if that is true, it's not Saudi Arabia who orchestrated 9/11 that people need to be red pilled about. It's about Israel and the dancing Israelis and all of that. So it's a little bit curious that he's pushing this whole, hey, did you guys know that Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11? But that being said, on everything else that came up on stage, whether it was abortion or the border wall, um, having a national identity was uniquely something he talked about and nobody else did. Mike Pence tried to respond by saying that we have a national identity and we are patriots and we're the most patriotic, God loving country in the world. And how dare you say otherwise? And that's really just a boomer speaking, not looking out in the streets around them at all the people with pink hair covered in tattoos who hate this country, who think that white people are evil, who think that capitalism is evil. Those people don't love our country. I understand the Mike Pence generation loves our country, and so that's where he's speaking from. But unfortunately, there is a violent revolt from millennials and younger, Gen Z, etc., of women in their 30s and 40s who are still in this third wave feminist worldview of thinking that women are actually equivalent to men and they're interchangeable, and that's just not true. And that's meant terrible things for their personal life and their fulfillment in life, their ability to find a God-loving husband and have a family with that individual. Those are the true purposes of life. And now they've deprived themselves of a decade or two worth of fertility and time they could have spent pursuing that, the actual purpose of life, rather than being distracted and marketed into pursuing this other thing that ultimately has left them 40 years old and addicted to boxed wine with 3 cats, and no men want to look at her because they can find a woman 15 years younger who doesn't have all the baggage, who hasn't slept with dozens of people, and isn't covered with tattoos and all that other stuff. And that's the woman that most men are going to choose. Sadly, that's just kind of the facts. But not to just sit here and slam the poor liberal women who went the wrong way in life. There's still a chance for them. God love them. We have to love them. They can't carry our children. most of that's a biological fact, but as men who are trying to create the next wave of Christian men in this country who are going to preserve our European cultural values, we got to be having multiple kids, and we can't do that with somebody who's 40 years old just starting motherhood. So, where else can we dig in here? I'll give you a couple updates about my day just to share and get some things off my chest. You may have seen me put out a reel only a couple hours ago. I was in the gym parking lot, and I'm in my car doing my usual happy hour that I've told you guys about many a times. My sit in the car, have a pre-workout while I study. Usually that's reading the Bible, or it's reading some other Christian literature or demographic information, crime statistics, something to enrich myself and better understand the world around me. And so today I was looking at scripture and looking at some writings in Timothy, where Paul is writing to Timothy about the roles of the different genders and the role of marriage in society and these things. And it was great reading. I was really enjoying it. And then all of a sudden, I keep losing my focus because there's this car next to me, some beat down hoopty with its windows down and its doors open, and some guy in dreadlocks sitting in the passenger seat with his feet kicked out of the window, blaring some hip hop music because it's his parking lot. It's not, the business's parking lot where they are doing business with their customers, people who pay to go there. It's not their parking lot where they need to preserve some kind of customer experience. It's actually just Jamal's parking lot to hang out and listen to his music as loud as he wants. So, pretty annoying. I'm not there disturbing anybody. I'm in the parking lot before I go into the gym, just hanging out, reading silently to myself, as us Europeans like to do. And then the tribe shows up, and Jamiroquai wants me to listen to his music while I'm studying the Bible. And it's like, really, you just can't escape this stuff. Everywhere you go, you're force fed the cultures of people who you don't want to participate in. I have no desire to participate in African culture or Mexican culture or Asian culture, none of it. I love European culture. I love whiteness. I love hot dogs and hamburgers. I love low crime rates. I love community. I love mothers and fathers staying together. These are the things that I value and cherish, but I am forced to co-occupy a space with people who just see the entire city as their playground and as their own personal property that ironically they pay the absolute least amount of taxes for, but they can park their car in a business parking lot and blare their music as loud as they want. I don't know why they feel entitled that they can do that, but that's just part of their culture. You just got to let them do it. Hey, this is how it works in Africa, so you just got to let them do their thing. If they want to beat their bongo drums, this is just what the tribe does. It's like, come on. Like, why do we allow this? Why do we just have a blanket tolerance for cultures that are not ours, that are openly disruptive to our culture? In our culture, we sit down, we read to accumulate knowledge and to put that knowledge into practice. That's what we do in a European culture. Maybe that's why we actually graduate high school and go on to get higher education and go on to be entrepreneurs and change the world. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But in Africa, where they didn't even have a written language until they were colonized, barely even had a calendar until they were colonized by Europeans, they have a different culture. This is just a fact that we have to be honest about. And this really bugs me because it's in the same category of obvious truths that we're told we have to deny for the sake of political correctness. It's in the same category as men and women are fundamentally the same or interchangeable. Men can be a police officer the same way a woman can be a police officer. It's like, no, they can't. They just can't. I'm sorry, that's not true. Same thing with firefighting, same thing with serving in the military, same thing with being societal leaders, being in government. Women do not have the temperament, the biological profile. They don't have it. I'm sorry, it's just the facts. Women's gift is to be the life giver and the caretaker in the home, serving the husband, serving God. It is not to be out there in the community, pursuing whatever career, trying to play boss girl, trying to play protector and provider. They're not equipped for that job. Doesn't mean that they'll just flat out fail to do it. It just means that they'll go out there and do a suboptimal job the entire time. Sure, as always, the bell curve states that there are going to be exceptional women who are exceptionally good at whatever thing. But on average, it's not the case. It's not what they're built for. So, hard news to swallow for some people, but it is what it is. I swallowed it long ago. I stopped fighting against it, and I stopped, more importantly, lying about it. There's a lot of people who know this, who get it. They understand women are not men, men are not women. We have different specialties. They get it. And they know that there's no one becoming the other. They get that too. And they know that the best form of marriage, the only legitimate form of marriage, is between man and woman. They get that. They know that. They know that the races are different because they have eyeballs and they have a brain. They can see that the races are different. But all of this is one giant category of you have to say 1 + 1 = 3. You can't state the obvious. You can't say the things that are just obviously true with the eyeball test, with the common sense test. It's too politically incorrect to say that. You just can't. You can't say women are better off at home. That's misogynistic. That's sexist. That's oppression. That's whatever. You can't say that different ethnicities are better off segregated from each other, peacefully existing apart, rather than trying to force themselves on top of each other, force each other to engage in each other's cultures, inevitably conflict over this, and then fight for the rest of time that you're sharing the same space. There's no way around that. I can't believe that people struggle with this information or with these concepts. It just baffles me. And it's more like they don't struggle with the concepts. When I explain it to them, they're like, that all makes sense. And I can, at a minimum, see why that is reasonable. Maybe that I don't agree. But where they really struggle is having the courage to go out and be in agreement in society with the things that are true. They can hold those beliefs personally at home, privately, but they struggle to actually speak up and say, well, the reason you're seeing this thing over here happening is because we're ignoring the truth. And that truth, you apply that to whatever the situation is that you're talking about, whether that's a man or a woman trying to do a man's job, or it's perpetual racial conflict. You look at something, you see it's the obvious truth, and you say it. You don't have to overthink it and go, well, what are they going to think of me if I say this thing that's obviously true? The thing I posted in my reel today about what is the trade-off here? In terms of diversity being so enriching for us and multiculturalism being so enriching, what are the riches we are getting from African culture? Please explain to me in plain detail so that a kindergartner can understand it. What is so great about African culture that we are willing to tolerate in exchange 50% of all of our violent crime coming from Black people? Black adult males, which is 6% actually of the entire population. 13% is all Black people, 6.5 is just Black males. And they are responsible for half of the crime in the entire country. So I shouldn't even have to provide any other argument than that to say that if you're worried about crime, then how about we start right there? If you're worried about rape and purse snatchings and lootings and carjackings, being stuck up at the ATM, being in the situation of somebody robbing a liquor store or a gas station that you're in, where you're just trying to pay the cashier and now this guy has a gun and you're just flipping a coin basically on whether or not they let you live. we get to have the luxury of our children going to schools and public schools that are like 75% black. And that's obviously a better thing for them than if the demographic was reversed. The biggest benefits we receive from African culture being the obvious, they're so musical. And what that means we get hip hop, basically, is what you're trying to say. They're musical, so we get their music category of jazz and blues and hip hop. Okay, I'm sure America would crumble and we would have never gotten to where we are now without those things. Granted that they didn't exist for the first 300 plus years of this country. But yeah, sure. Black music is worth 50% of all the violent crime, and half of our welfare programs being devoted to the 13% of the country, and all the other stuff I said in my reel. I won't repeat it all now. But anyway, I didn't really mean to go into this episode and just start ranting. I meant to go into this episode and watch this Tucker Carlson interview with Donald Trump, because as we all know, he went to Georgia last night for his forced humiliation ritual that was marching him through the jail, having him post bail. So, he's obviously out and whatnot. Out on bail, I think, is $200,000. And they arrested a bunch of his affiliates as well, which is completely crooked. It's just so obscene that the government is going after not just Trump, who they obviously hate, but they're just trying to personally attack anybody related to Trump or affiliated with Trump. It's a very, very rotten partisan use of the Department of Justice. So all of this is happening for a reason. And if you read the Bible, we will, as Christians, know that God often uses evil for his own intentions to create a better good, a better outcome. He allows people to do evil things in his plot to reshape society, call certain things to attention, call certain problems in our society to attention. So while it's very difficult to watch this happen to Donald Trump, we have to know that this is actually how Trump understands it. He understands that this is a bit of a martyr situation where it just has to be this way. There's no other way for everybody to finally come to the epiphany of just how corrupt our government is than allowing this drama to unfold on national TV and on social media, etc. So maybe he'll talk through some of that on this interview. We're going to play it. Maybe we'll get through the whole thing tonight. I think it's 45 minutes. And I got a couple of maybe an hour or two to kill before my dinner time. So I'm going to hang out, drink this Mountain Dew Zero. Diet Mountain Dew is old school. I don't even think they make that anymore. Show my age there. Like people drinking Diet Coke. Nobody drinks Diet Coke anymore. Everybody drinks Coke Zero. But that's pretty good. Pretty good. I haven't had one in a long time. It's pretty good. I also have a backup beverage in my cooler over here. That's a Gatorade Zero. It's so hot here, you guys. It's 107 degrees heat index. Pretty oppressive, if I'll say so. This is climate oppression that I'm experiencing. Who can I sue for this? Is there somebody I can sue? Is it you guys' fault? Have you left your gas stoves on too long? Is that why it's so hot at my house? Did you mow your lawn yesterday? Did you put all this carbon in the atmosphere that's making this spare bedroom upstairs so hot? I think this is your fault. What I'm going to need from you is some of your tax money. Your tax money needs to go to making it cooler in my house. We need socialism right now. But since that's going to take this country in the wrong path, instead, what I'm willing to settle for is a desk fan. I have a desk fan on me, so I hope that's not giving you background noise. I don't think it is. I have this lav mic that you guys are hearing, so I think it cuts off any of that ambient noise. But is there anything else that I wanted to talk about? Oh, I did have my job interview this morning. I posted some stories about it throughout the day, and I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who offered prayers and support for me. I prayed at length about it, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about it before we go into this Trump interview, since we're just hanging out as friends. Not to go into detail about who the job was with and really, really nitty gritty stuff. There's no reason to do that, but I was just explaining how I approach job interviews in general, and I have a significant amount of experience at this point in my career. As a contractor for a decade, I had to continually find new contracts, meaning I wasn't just at like one job for 10 straight years. Basically, once a year, I had to go out and find a new job, which means going through the interview process, updating your resume, and all that stuff. So this is by no means my first rodeo, and I've actually become pretty comfortable with interviews and applying for jobs and all of that stuff. So I've developed a pretty good routine to keep my anxiety level down and go into each interview confident and calm and speaking clearly. And so the way I did that today was I woke up 2 hours before the interview, made sure I had plenty of time. And throughout the week, I had been preparing notes about my experience and how I thought it would translate to what they're looking for on this job. And so I'd already done a good bit of preparation just going into the day, but I did one final study session about 30 minutes before the interview. And then I checked my Zoom to make sure I look good on camera. Of course, you got to have that. But just to make sure the back of the room looks good and you just want to look professional. And so get into the interview and everything. And you guys probably know, having gone through some interviews yourself, or it's kind of like first dates also. When you put your best self out there, like when you knock it out of the park and make your best first impression, right? When that happens, they're laughing, you're getting along great. Somehow you just had the answer to every question right there. And that's kind of like a 10 out of 10, a perfect A. This interview was not one of those, I'll say that, but I do think it went well. And keep in mind, you don't have to be perfect. Perfect isn't the expectation. Having been on the other side of many interviews as a hiring manager, I know that as the manager, you're not looking for the person on the other side of the screen or in the room there with you to respond perfectly and like almost like they have a script for every question. That's not realistic. Nobody expects that. I did stumble a little bit on a couple of questions just because they were questions I frankly hadn't thought about in a couple of years. Like nobody had phrased a question like that to me before in a long time. And the questions were specific to a role that I held several years ago. And so they were like detailed questions about projects on a role that I had 3 roles ago. And so I was like, struggling to remember the very fine details of some of the daily and weekly things I did at that job just because it was so long ago. It seems like pretty far back in my career now, honestly. And so that may have reflected a little bit of unclearness in my interview, unfortunately. I I I prepared I did role playing where you pretend you were asked a question and then you speak out loud about how you would answer that question. And so I did that for many interviewing questions, and the question the guy hit me with was not one of the ones that I had thought through before. So I did the best I could, and I think I scored in my head. I would have rated myself about a 75 to an 85. And of course, that's not knowing a single thing about who else they're interviewing, the caliber of talent and background that these other people have. You never know. You never know. And this is why the serenity prayer is said usually at a minimum once every day in my life. I say it every day before bed, but I often say it when I'm out walking my dog, just enjoying the neighborhood, enjoying the morning, or whenever else I need serenity. I say it because we know as Christians, there's only so much of our own will that can force things into being. We know that we can improve the odds and that kind of stuff, but the rest of it, we truly surrender and are at full peace with allowing God to dictate what happens next. And so if this role works out for me, then I'll be happy. I applied for it. I want it, obviously. But if it doesn't, I won't see it as God being cruel to me or this company being unfair to me, or I won't be excessively hard on myself and say, yeah, you screwed up that interview. How could you be so stupid? How could you not see that question coming? I'm not going to do any of those things. So that's just some tips about interviewing. It's a difficult process, I will say, especially as you notch yourself up the rungs on the career ladder. The stakes always feel a bit higher because you're making more money. And so the decision on their part, whether or not they get to start cutting those big checks to you, it's a big decision for them to make. So everybody is kind of aware of this is a big decision. It's not like you're hiring somebody to fry chicken and french fries for you. You know, we operate in the big leagues, okay? You got to have big boy pants to play in the big leagues, and you got to have a big boy personality to do well in the big leagues. So that means taking the hits when they come, stumbling sometimes, but getting back up and moving forward. So I'll keep you guys posted. We'll see. I will say, here's another tip that this is the first time I've ever done this. After I wrapped up the interview, it was 30 minutes and it was with two individuals. I was thinking about that question the guy asked me that I kind of stumbled on that was regarding experience I had a number of years back that I just hadn't thought about recently. And I was thinking of specific examples I could have, if I had more time to sit there and really think about it, that I could have probably provided had I thought them through beforehand, had I remembered them. And so I was thinking, like, man, I wonder if it would be appropriate if I just like typed up an email saying, hey, I thought of these examples after the fact that you may find relevant to the question that you asked me, which is what I ended up doing. I said, you know what? The thing is it's not ever going to hurt, right? What's the worst that's going to happen? If they thought you weren't the right person for the job, then you sending a follow-up email saying, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. By the way, I thought of a few things in my background that may be relevant to that question that you asked. That's never going to hurt the situation. Worst case, you never even hear back, whatever. Some people fear rejection so much that they would rather leave things silently and never have to hear about getting rejected. Just kind of take it, well, I haven't heard back in a few weeks, so kind of means I should move on. But I don't really care. If I send them a letter talking about this extra information and they say, we appreciate you following up. Ultimately, we decided to go with somebody else who had more relevant experience or for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. That's okay. That's educational. That tells you how competitive the market is. That gives you a realistic feedback on your own resume versus how you see your experience versus how other people interpret your experience. It helps you narrow down what industry you should be trying to get yourself into as well, and whether or not your current set of experience and background aligns with this industry that you're trying to move yourself into, assuming it's a different one. So lots of interesting stuff, learnable moments for me today. I'm appreciative. I thank God for it. I thanked him for the opportunity to even have a chance at interviewing and just putting myself in front of these people and having a conversation to learn more about what they're looking for and share about myself. I thank God for that. I thank him for having another day. And with that being said, let's jump into this interview because this was 24 hours before he was arrested and marched through the jail. And I'm interested to see what it had to say. This was live during the Fox News GOP debate, so they were airing at the same time, which was intentional. By the way, this video now has 256 million views. Compared to whatever Fox News got, I think it was probably a couple million at best last night. I would have to say that Donald Trump crushed the competition. I had just repented to Jesus as a First Nation Canadian. Can you pray for me for my walk with Jesus? Vast Black. Absolutely, my friend. I'm happy to pray for you. I take prayer requests during stream all the time. I'll pray for you right now. So I don't know your name. All I know is your pen name here on Instagram, Vast Black. But let's offer a prayer to our Savior Jesus here. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this opportunity for our new friend here on stream who just recently came to Jesus and repented for his previous life, taking up Jesus' cross rather than his own. This is a very special moment in their life. It's a life-changing moment. I know, having gone through it, I can help share what the rest of this journey looks like for this individual, some encouraging words of faith. I know, Lord, that you have lit the way for me. It's actually what Jesus told us in saying that I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. He told us that simply following him, that is the way, and it's the only way. So as soon as one makes the decision to commit their lives to him, we know that they're on the right path. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come easily, and there are going to be parts of being a Christian, standing for Jesus's words, that unfortunately, living in a fallen world, we know are going to invite criticism from others, insults and slander from others. We understand we are living in a fallen world, but we know that so long as we're faithful in you, we will move on to your kingdom. So, Lord, as this individual starts walking a new life with you, I ask that you surround him with your love. Remind him daily of your grace, the fact that you waited for him patiently to find him. And things will only get better now that he has found you. We love you, Lord. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Repentance is important. I try to do it on a daily basis as part of my prayer routine at night. I say the serenity prayer just to remind myself of what's in my control and versus what's not in my control. But as part of my nightly prayer routine, I also try to remind myself of the sins I have committed recently, of which there are almost always not one, but multiple. And I wish I was better. I was born again 4 years ago. I've been working on it every single day. And don't get me wrong, I'm way better than I was when Jesus picked me up out of liberal wasteland, Portland, Oregon, and saved my life. I'm way better than I was then. But I still have my sinful behaviors, and I still need his help on a daily basis to reduce those sinful behaviors to as close to zero as possible, as close to never as possible, being a human being who is subject to greed, envy, lust, pride, sloth, gluttony, all of these things that are just difficult. That's why Jesus came back for us. That's why he came back for us. So we love him. He saved our lives. He's the savior of countless lives and will continue to be so, no matter how much the synagogue of Satan and everybody else tries to slander his name, tries to blaspheme him, tries to live in denial that he's not real. We feel for them. I was talking to one of them in the Instagram comments today. This guy he's left, like, not even exaggerating, 100 replies on this one comment I made on a video 6 months ago or something. My reply has 1,700 reply or 1,700 likes, meaning 1,700 people out there agree with me that my opinion is very based and that women should stay at home and just pursue husbands and have kids. That's what God wants them to do. It's not the misogynist point of view. And so this white knight liberal gets on there and starts talking about how God's not real, and it's Santa Claus, it's Sky Daddy, it's Fantasyland, it's all the usual cringe atheist stuff. He starts talking about Pascal's wager. And so I'm having to educate him on, it's obvious that you are a scarred individual either by somebody else who is Christian, so you have a false interpretation of Christianity, or you've suffered some kind of trauma that you can't reconcile why a loving God would allow something like that to happen. These are just the usual reasons people are atheists. And so he was obviously one of those people, and I've been patient with him. I've just been telling him, hey man, I haven't advised anybody do anything that the Bible hasn't said is the right thing to do. So whether or not you have negative opinions about the things I'm saying, you're not in a disagreement with Josh on beholding the truth. You're in disagreement with God. And you can deny God exists all you want, but that doesn't change the fact that we all got here somehow. And the majority of people who are happy believe that that somehow is God. All the ones who are living these self-destructive lifestyles, borderline suicidal, depressed, cutting themselves, obese, pink hair, covered in tattoos, masochistic lifestyles, it just so happens that all of them are the ones who don't believe in God. So you can find the correlation there. Yeah, sad days we live in, fallen world and all, but what are we going to do? We're going to do what we're told to do. We're going to do the Great Commission. We're going to go out there every single day, confront the people on Instagram, confront the people in society who are spreading the filth and violence. And we will not tell a lie and say that sin is not sin. We won't do it. That being said, guys, let's look into this interview here and enjoy ourselves a beverage. We're 36 minutes in. It's time to get this party started. It's almost 5 o'clock my time, so it's truly happy hour. Crack open a beverage, see what Donald Trump had to say to Tucker Carlson the night before he was arrested.
Mr. President, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Why aren't you at the Fox News debate tonight in Milwaukee?
Well, you know, a lot of people have been asking me that, and many people said you shouldn't do them, but you see the polls have come out, and I'm leading by 50 and 60 points. And, you know, some of them are at 1 and 0 and 2. And I'm saying, do I sit there for an hour or 2 hours, whatever it's going to be, and get harassed by people that shouldn't even be running for president? Should I be doing that? And a network that isn't particularly friendly to me, frankly. You know, they were backing Ron DeSanctimonious like crazy, and now they've given up on him. I mean, it's a lost cause. It reminded me very much of 2016. You know, in 2016, I went through the same stuff and had to fight them all the way, and then they became very friendly after I won, or just about when I was winning. But I just felt it would be more appropriate not to do the debate. I don't think it's right to do it. If you're leading by 50, 60, I have one poll, I'm leading by 70 points, and I'm saying, why am I doing it? And I'm going to have 8 people, 10 people, whoever made the debate, I don't know how many it is, but I'm going to have all these people screaming at me, shouting questions at me, all of which I love answering, I love doing, but it doesn't make sense to do them. So
he's just our guy. It's so obvious. His whole personality, his confidence, but it's not unfounded confidence. Like, his logic is 100% sound. Liberals don't see it this way because they don't like him, but you can't deny the fact that, strategically speaking, there is no incentive whatsoever for him to do these debates. And so why would he?
Taking a pass, as you probably noticed.
Well, I did. I'm grateful that you did. It's interesting, though, because you spent a lot of your career in television.
Yeah.
You had a top show in television on NBC. But you don't feel the need now running for president to do television, obviously. Do you think television is declining?
Well, according to a poll that I guess we just saw, it just came out where it's down like 30, 35%, but I think they were referring to cable. I think cable's down because it's lost credibility. MSNBC, or as they say, MSDNC, is so bad. It's so wrong what they write and what they do and what they say. It's, you know, it's fake news, as I said. I think I came up with that term. I hope I did, because it's a good one. It's not tough enough anymore. It's corrupt news. You know, really what you do is call it corrupt news, but somehow that doesn't play as nicely. But it is corrupt news. So you have MSNBC and you have CNN, who's absolutely doing no ratings at all. I mean, they're dead. But they're doing none because they don't have credibility. They really don't have credibility. Fox is way down, as you know. And the good old days are long ago. I will say this, it could come back, but they just don't have a lot of credibility. Tucker, you know that perhaps better than anybody. I think it was a terrible move getting rid of you. You were #1 on television, and all of a sudden we're doing this interview, but we'll get bigger ratings using this crazy forum that you're using than probably probably the debate or competition.
When you say there are people on stage who shouldn't be running for president, who do you mean?
Well, I don't want to really use names, but it wouldn't matter too much. A guy like, I call him Ada Hutchinson. It's Asa, but I call him Ada.
Why do you call him Ada?
I could tell you, but I don't want to get myself in a little trouble. But he's weak and pathetic, and he was, I never understood the guy, never knew him. He was the governor of Arkansas, not a very popular guy. I don't know how but that state is such a great state. The people are so incredible in that state, and they love me and I love them. How does this guy get elected governor of Arkansas? But he's
The realism with which Donald Trump talks, he just keeps it real. Like, he doesn't talk politically correct. He's like, yeah, this guy's just useless. And he's like fully dismissing people's entire existence, like as if they're not even human. And there's a lot of people who say, like, that's just so offensive to dismiss somebody like they're not even human and to call them garbage and to say that they're worthless. And how could you be so insensitive? It's like, have you ever looked at how the media treats Donald Trump? Not how Donald Trump treats people, but how the media treats Donald Trump. If you had actually ever been remotely objective for a single second of your life, you will see that the widespread media, talking about dozens of different platforms, whether you're talking about the newspapers, New York Times and the Washington Post and the LA Times, Huffington Post, or you can BuzzFeed, everything that you can read online is negative about Donald Trump. And then as soon as you turn on the TV, every single news channel is negative about Donald Trump. And so you guys expect him to get up here and blow smoke up other people's behinds who are openly attacking him and insulting him, calling him a liar, calling him a treasonous traitor. And he'll get backlash for talking about how worthless these other people are. But it's like, this is the double standard that has been playing out for 7 years now. And to watch the demise of all the legacy media is, I will tell you, schadenfreude 1000%. I don't know that I pronounced that right, but it's the German word for taking pleasure in someone else's fall. I don't want people to lose their jobs. I don't want anybody financially hurt, any individuals. Not that you want that, but if the entire company of CNN went bankrupt because of their poor business practices, and by poor business practices, I mean the product you're serving to your customer base is unhealthy, and it's not what they want or need, and that's why your business is failing. This is just the free market doing what it does. And so when you see this stream, this 45-minute Twitter video get 260 million views in a couple days, that's more views than every single other news network got combined. And this video had, I can't remember the numbers by the first day. I want to say it was like 25 million in the first day. And that number alone in the first day is more than all the other ones got combined. And now it's just multiplying exponentially since then. So it just goes to show the strength of the alternative tech platforms as compared to legacy media. Let's jump back in. I knew this interview was going to be great. I'm very much enjoying it. He's such a shot in the arm of realness. Talk to me like you would talk to your family, talk to your brothers, like you would talk to your business partners when, hey guys, this is business. We can't stop we have to stop sugarcoating things and worrying about people's feelings. Our business is going to fail. And Trump's business is America. So this is the entire ethos of Donald Trump, is that I'm trying to run America as a business, not be overly emotional like a woman, not be overly emotional like a gay man. I'm trying to run this as a straight, white, meaning European culturally derived man who believes in God. And we don't have time for the nonsense. We don't have time for all this gender shit. It's a distraction. In Donald Trump's case, he's even against talking about racial stuff. He'd rather just say, hey, let's pretend that race isn't even real. He's not a racial realist like me, Nick Fuentes, and others are. He won't touch the whole concept of there is something genetically different about the European race than other races, and that's why European countries look different than other countries. he won't go down that road, but he does understand, very practically speaking, what a changing demographic means. And that's why he is a nationalist who says immigration is not something that you just pour into your country indefinitely forever and assume that that's only going to have positive benefits. Okay, let's keep going.
Nasty always, and has been. A guy like Chris Christie, the guy left with a 8%, think of it, 8% approval rating in New Jersey. Now he's running for president. And he runs solely on the basis, oh, let's get Trump. He's like a savage maniac. He's like a lunatic. And that's all he talks about. His poll numbers are very, very low. He's about 2%.
What's he like? You know him well.
No, I've been friendly with him over the years, but I couldn't give him a job because I just never trusted him very much. I was just never one of his people that really trusted him. I never gave him the job. And that's one of the reasons he feels so hurt and so betrayed. And I understand that. I really do. I understand it. But I never gave him. You know, he wanted to be different things. He was looking at different elements of the administration. And we decided, I decided just, I didn't want to do it. And now I'm glad I did, because you see, but you know, we had some great people. I had great people. We'll have even better people if we do this, because now I know Washington. Before I didn't know Washington. But guys like Bill Barr were terrible. I mean, they were, I would say, Bushies. I say that with respect to the Bush family, but they were Bushies, and just it doesn't work out for us.
It was clear, this is kind of far afield, but it was just interesting. I read Barr's account of his time. He wrote a book about it,
right?
His autobiography. And in it, he lies about Jeffrey Epstein's death. Clearly lies. Do you think Epstein killed himself sincerely?
I don't know. I will say that, you know, he was a fixture in Palm Beach.
Yeah.
I don't know what Barr said about it either. I have no idea what he said. What did he say? He killed himself, probably?
He said he killed himself and that they were going to do this investigation. They never did the investigation. It's never been public.
Well,
and they hid it. And, like, why are they doing that? And clearly Barr knew. But why would Bill Barr be covering up the death of Jeffrey Epstein?
Bill Barr didn't do an investigation on the election fraud either, okay? He said he did, and he pretended he did, but he didn't. McSwain, the U.S. attorney in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, said Barr just wouldn't let him do it. It was crazy. Barr became so petrified, so frightened of being impeached. They were going to impeach him. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
It's not a big moment in history. But they said, we're going to impeach. You know, they play a much rougher game, the left, the lunatics. And they were going to impeach Bill Barr, and he was petrified. Now, how do you not get impeached? Don't do any of this stuff. But he didn't do the job there. I don't know what he did with Epstein, but possibly he didn't.
Do you think it's possible that Epstein was killed?
Oh, sure, it's possible. I mean, I don't really believe. I think he probably committed suicide. He had a life with, you know, beautiful homes and beautiful everything, and he all of a sudden he's incarcerated and not doing very well. I would say that he did, but there are those people. There are many people. I think you're one of them, right? But a lot.
I want to point out something important on this whole Epstein suicide. Did he off himself, or did somebody pay to have the cameras off and pay to have an assassin come in and take him out? Donald Trump is saying that it doesn't make sense that he would have suicided himself because he has a beautiful wife and he has beautiful homes and he's rich and blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you're talking about life in prison, a beautiful wife and a beautiful home aren't really doing much for you other than just helping you avoid the guilt of having killed yourself. But I want to point out something, that there may have been a situation. I don't think he committed suicide. I think he was killed. But there is a realm where he did commit suicide, and the reason was he had information that he knew could have been potentially tortured out of him, Guantanamo Bay style, that if that information gets out, it's not just that he gets executed. It's not just that he's risking his own life. He's putting his family in danger by allowing that information to get out. And if he's thinking that I would not survive torture, I would suck. He knew that he was a rat. He knew that he would squeal if he got tortured. And he knows that the result of squealing would be perhaps harm to his beautiful wife or harm to other people he cares about. And so you know that if you're potential exposure of this deadly information is a risk, and you don't have much to look forward to in life anyways, because you're spending the rest of your life in jail, then maybe you do commit suicide, especially if you don't believe in God. If you believe in God, you don't commit suicide, and it turns out you were actually murdered. Those are kind of your decision trees to figure out which ones make the most sense to you. But anyway, back into the interview.
A lot of people think that he was killed. He knew a lot on a lot of people.
He was killed.
You think so?
I think the closer you look, I'm not a conspiracy person at all. I believe everything I hear. But yeah, the closer you look into it, I mean, the Attorney General of the United States, your Attorney General, clearly lied about the Epstein death.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Why?
He was certainly. It wasn't well done. They had no cameras. They had no anything. Everybody was sleeping, and you know, a case could be made. Look, I'm not going to get involved in it, but I can tell you, a case could be made either way. But it certainly wasn't the most well-run place.
So the reason I'm asking you is I'm looking at the trajectory since 2015 when you got into politics, you know, for real, and then won. It started with protests against you, massive protests, organized protests by the left, and then it moved to impeachment twice, and now indictment. I mean, the next stage is violence. Are you worried that they're going to try and kill you? Why wouldn't they try and kill you, honestly?
They're savage animals. They are people that are sick, really sick. You have great people in the Democrat Party. You have great people that are Democrats. Most of the people in our country are fantastic, and I'm representing everybody. I'm not just Republicans or conservatives. I represent everybody. I'm the president of everybody. But I've seen what they do. I've seen the lengths that they go to. When they make up the Russia, when that's exposed and they go down, and Barr should have gone after them, and other people should have gone after. And they did very late, because the Durham report came out. It was fairly good. It could have been a lot tougher, I guess, but it was fairly good. But it explained how corrupt it was. I'll tell you who did a great job was the Inspector General Horowitz. He did a phenomenal report. You didn't have to go to Durham. He did it on Comey and on, I guess, McCabe and some others, and it was a vicious, it was basically a true report, how bad they are. But these people are sick people. These are people that I think they hate our country. You want to know the truth. When you see open borders, when you see these policies that they have, and so many other things, it's so sad to see. You know, we have a country that's very fragile right now. I've never seen, I will say, look, I ran in 16, which was 15, but I ran in 16, election in 16, and there was tremendous spirit. In 20, there was even more spirit. We got millions and millions more votes. You know, it wasn't even a contest. People said, well, what do you think of 20? I said, we did much better. We did. You got to base it on the number of votes. We got many more votes in 20 than we did in 16. But the election was rigged. It was a rigged election. And with COVID, they used COVID to cheat in a lot of different things, and we have so much on it. It's like so easy. But we had judges that didn't want to look. We had people didn't want to get involved. They called you, he's a conspiracy theorist if you say anything about the election. But I have never seen spirit like there is right now. Even coming down here, just the people on the road that are just absolutely going crazy. And the reason is, I think they like me, and I know they love my policies. I hope they like me too. You know, a lot of people say they don't like me, but they like my policies. I think they like me. But I have never seen spirit like it is right now. And the reason is because crooked Joe Biden is so bad. He's the worst president in the history of our country. I don't think he's going to make it to the gate, but you know, you never know. But he's a corrupt person, so corrupt that I took the name off Hillary. You know, I don't do two people at one time. I took the crooked Hillary and I retired the name. That was a good day for her. I bet she was very happy. And I used it for Joe because it's crooked Joe. But Joe is really...
But you don't think he's going to make it to November of 24?
Well, I think he's worse mentally than he is physically. And physically, he's not exactly a triathlete or any kind of an athlete. You look at him, he can't walk to the helicopter. He walks, he can't lift his feet out of the grass. You know, it's only 2 inches at the White House, right? That's not a lot. But you watch him, and it looks like he's walking on toothpicks. So, and then you see him on the beach where he can't lift a chair. You know, those chairs are meant to be light, right? They're like 2 ounces. You lift them up. He can't lift the chair. He can't walk to the chair. And I don't know what they're doing with the beach. You know, this beach is seeming to play a big role, but they love pictures of him on the beach. I think he looks terrible on the beach. He looks terrible on the beach.
Skinny legs.
Well, he can't walk through the sand. You know, sand is not that easy to walk through, but when he walks through it, he can't walk through the sand. And there's somebody in there that thinks he looks fabulous at the beach. I think he looks horrible at the beach. Plus, the beach doesn't represent what a president's supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be working. You're supposed to be getting us out of that horrible, horrible war that we're very much involved in with Russia and Ukraine. You could do that. You could do that very easily. I believe you could do that I don't believe he could do it because he's just incompetent. But that's a war that should end immediately, not because of one side or the other, because hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. Can you imagine you're in an apartment house and rockets are going into that building and blowing it up and knocking it down? And who can, why should anybody, human beings, these are human, whether they're Russian or Ukrainian or whatever they are, it's got to be stopped. And it can be stopped very easily. It would have never started. If I were president, it would have never started.
So back to Biden, I'm interested. So you think he's failing? He obviously is failing. I think it's clear to everybody. But that would make Kamala Harris the candidate?
Well, not really. I mean, I guess they'd have maybe a free-for-all. A lot of people say she has to remain for certain reasons the candidate. She has to. I don't think that's true, actually. I don't think that other people would stand for it. She has some bad moments. Her moments are almost as bad as his. I think his are worse, actually.
Yeah.
But
she seems pretty senile, too.
She speaks in rhyme. You know, it's weird. It's weird. But she has bad moments. And
in rhyme? What do you...
Well, the way she talks, the bus will go here and then the bus will go there because that's what buses do. And it's weird. The whole thing is weird. This is not a president of the United States future. And
see what I'm saying? We just love him. He's just our guy, man. We need Grandpa Trump back, dude. We need Trump for 8 more years. I think that's illegal. I think he can't actually serve 2 more terms. We need Trump to get in office and then abolish the Constitution, I guess. I don't know the legalities, but somehow we need Trump leading the country for the rest of time until we have to choose the next leader, which maybe gives us 10 years. Because nobody else keeps it real like Trump. And that's what we need. We need realness. We need truth. We need people who are not politically correct. It's been too long, Trump. Like, he needs a nightly live stream is what Trump needs. We would all just tune in, watch Donald Trump for an hour every night, and it would be awesome. That's what I want. Now, unfortunately, more than we need that, we need him to lead the country. Imagine like a presidency where they had like an hour live stream 4 nights a week. That's a futurist presidency. They could probably pull that off. Not too much to ask this day and age with all the technology. It's very easy. I'd be willing to settle for 3 days a week. Maybe even 2. Look, okay, just give me 1 live stream with Donald Trump for a full hour every week, and I'll be happy. Ideally, we would get multiple nights a week, though. It provides transparency into the job, lets you know that he's actively engaged, you know, he's not out on vacations and whatnot. I think it's actually a pretty brilliant idea. Somebody should talk to his campaign manager for me.
And I think they probably have some kind of a primary and other people will get involved.
Newsom, right? I mean,
could be. I mean, you know, I always got along well with him, believe it or not, but could be him, could be somebody else. He's got a big load on his shoulders because you look at California, what's happened. But I don't know if the American people really, the people that vote for him, I don't even know if they care. You know, you look at so many of the things that are going on, and people don't seem to be, in the old days, if you had a bad record, it meant a lot. Today, if you have a bad record, it doesn't really mean anything. You know, he looks good, he's a nice looking guy, speaks well. But Biden, every time you watch him talking, it's like he's walking on eggs. You're waiting for him to collapse. And he almost always does. And I got to know the leaders of all of the countries, essentially, but the big ones. And the bigger, the tougher the leader. You know, it's like sort
Yeah.
of, I guess maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But I got to know President Xi of China and Putin and Kim Jong-un, North Korea. Did a great job with North Korea, kept us out of a nuclear war. We would have 40,000 dead soldiers right now. They'd drop a nuke right on top of the military base. But we have 40,000 soldiers over there. And I did great. I got along with them great. That's a positive. You know, the press said, he said nice things about Kim Jong-un. I also said horrible things at the beginning. Horrible enough that he wanted to talk. And we talked, and we met in Singapore. We met actually twice. And we had unbelievable meetings. I know him very well. We were in great shape with him.
What do you think he and Xi and Putin think of Biden?
I think they can't believe it. I think they probably say this is some kind of a system. You know, they had great respect for our country. They respected me. They had great respect for our country when I was there. Every one of them. Look, if you go to North Korea, you take a look at what happened. You know, the Olympics was dead. South Korea spent billions on the Olympics. Nobody was going to go. They didn't want to get blown up. They called me and they said, we are going to let the Olympics proceed. This is North Korea. I said, you should go into the Olympics. Put your athletes in. It wasn't like, you know, they were big on athletes because, you know.
Famine.
But they went in and they actually participated. And within about 2 days, the entire thing was sold out. And if it wasn't me, that would have never happened. But I got along very well with him, and that's a positive thing. He does have massive nuclear power, by the way. And if Hillary would have gotten in, or if the Obama thought process continued, it would have been a nuclear war, absolutely, with North Korea. He was expecting to go into a war, and it would have been a nuclear war.
So do you think the rest of the world looks on at Biden and thinks someone else has got to be running the government?
Well, somebody else has to be. I don't think he's capable of doing anything. Look, when I debated him, I said, how come, and this was in front of probably not a friend of yours, Chris Wallace. He was the moderator.
Not a friend.
I said, why is it he wants to be Mike, but he doesn't have the talent? It's one of those
bitchy little man.
He wanted to be his father, but he didn't have the talent of his father was great. His father,
a little fussy man.
His father interviewed me in 60 Minutes. It was actually a 10. Can you believe it?
No, I totally. His father had talent, at least.
I may have been the only guy that he gave a good 60 Minutes to. He was rough.
Really?
His father was tough. He was great, though. He was great at what he did. But Chris Wallace was so upset. He was guarding this guy who wouldn't do a show, by the way. You know, he wouldn't do. I figured. I didn't mind Chris Wallace because Biden wouldn't do a show. And it was very obvious. You know, he kept asking him and asking, but he wouldn't do the show. So I figured he's got to like me. But he came from a different planet. But remember when I asked the question, why is it that the mayor of Moscow's wife is allowed to give you $3.5 million? Don't forget, that was brought up. Now it's brought up all the time. But that was brought up by me long before anyone ever heard of it. I said, the mayor of Moscow's wife giving you $3.5 million. What did you do to deserve $3.5 million? To Biden. And Chris Wallace said, this has nothing to do with the debate. I mean, he fought.
He got in the way of the question.
No, it was crazy. And I said, well, wait a minute. He got $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. Now, people forget that, but if you go back and take a look, you will see. And Chris Wallace didn't want me to ask that question. I said, I think it's a very appropriate question. It turned out to be much more appropriate than people thought.
Amazing. So do you have a preference in, assuming you're the Republican nominee and all goes as you plan it to go, do you have a preference in who you run against?
In many ways, I'd love to run against him because his record's so bad. You know, it's still horrible when you look at inflation and everything else, but others also have very bad records. I mean, California's a bad record, so, you know, should it be Gavin or should it be somebody else? When I look at San Francisco, what's happened to that incredible city. That was one of the greatest cities in the world just a short while ago, and now it's very sad when you look at it. Los Angeles, every city practically, all the Democrat-run cities. You know, Republican-run cities are doing very nicely because they arrest people when you have crimes, and they don't go after political candidates because they think it's good. You know, I mean, it's like been amazing. My poll numbers are the highest I've ever had, but because people understand it.
Can I just ask you, that
Yes.
gets back to my original question. So if the protest didn't work, you got elected anyway. Yeah. Impeachment didn't work twice, obviously. Indictment is not working. Your poll numbers go up. When they raided Mar-a-Lago in August of last year, your numbers went up. they can indict you 20 times and you're not gonna lose the Republican primary because of that.
Well, so, it makes it look even more ridiculous. I mean, the 4 indictments, and maybe there'll be more. I don't know. These people are crazy.
But they're counterproductive. So if you chart it out, it's an escalation, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So what's next? After, try to put you in prison for the rest of your life, that's not working. So, like, don't they have to kill you now?
I think the people of our country don't get enough credit for how smart they are. And I'm not sure I would have said this 10 years ago, but they get it. They really get it. When somebody gets indicted, your poll numbers go down. When somebody gets indicted, you announce, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be leaving to spend time with my family and to fight for the rest of my life on this stuff. But you're out of politics. I got indicted 4 times. All trivia, nonsense, bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's horrible when you look, and you look at what they're doing. The boxes hoax, I'm covered by the Presidential Records Act. I'm allowed to do exactly that. He's not covered, and he's got 25 times the number of boxes, and he's got them stored in Chinatown. He's got them stored in a flimsy garage underneath his Corvette at Penn. And by the way, at Penn, he gets millions of dollars. China pays this guy millions of dollars. See, I think he's the most corrupt president we've ever had, and he also has the distinction of being the most incompetent. And I believe both. I mean, he's both incompetent and corrupt.
So
and
who
I
is running the
actually
government?
believe he's compromised because China knows so much about him. They know where the money comes from. They know where it is, who paid it, and they probably paid it. Well, they do pay Penn, and he gets $1 million. I think he takes $999,000 because keeps it a little bit under $1 million, like by $1. But he, in many ways, is a Manchurian candidate. We have a Manchurian candidate. And he's afraid to tell Russia to get out of Cuba. He's afraid to tell China to get out of Cuba. He's afraid. China now is building, think of this, China is building military installations in Cuba. The Cuban population of Miami is not too happy because they're never going to be able to go back. And you don't even hear about it. And the worst culprit is the press, the media, because normally, when I first heard that China's building installations in Cuba, and installations means military installations, okay, they said just some communication. They did that on the islands with Japan. They took the island, they started this massive construction, and they told everybody, including the Japanese have to be very careful, they told everybody that this is a housing development. They're going to build a housing development. And I said, how come the runway is 20,000 feet long? Private jets need 4,000 feet. They don't need 20,000 feet. The big ones need 20,000 feet. They don't even need 20. And I looked at the runway. I said, that's the largest runway ever built, both in width and length, for housing development. There's nobody that has a plane that big that you would have a runway that's
Why is
for
China
testing.
allowed to conduct imperialism in our hemisphere?
Well, yeah, and it's far beyond Cuba. It's all over South America.
Yeah, in the Caribbean.
So we built a thing called the Panama Canal. We lost 35,000 people to the mosquito, malaria.
Yeah.
We lost 35,000 people building. We lost 35,000 people because of the mosquito. Vicious. They had to build under nets. It was one of the true great wonders of the world. As he said, one of the 9 wonders of the world. No, it was one of the 7. It happened a little while ago, It says 9 wonders of the world. You could make 9 wonders. He would have been better off if he stuck with the 9 and just said, yeah, I think it's 9. But this is one of the true 7 wonders of the world. And you take a look at the Panama Canal. It was such an incredible engineering marvel. We sold it under Jimmy Carter. We sold it to Panama for $1. The following day, they quadrupled the amount of money that ships had to pay to get across. They didn't lose one ship. And now they've made it much bigger, and now they've widened it. They've doubled it, right? They've more than doubled it. And it's one of the most profitable things. Any time it's just incredible, right? We gave it away for $1. China now controls it. They actually control the Panama Canal. They run it, they control it. And we shouldn't let that happen. And we can't let China be in Cuba. And they'll get out. If I'm president, they'll get out. Because I had a very good relationship with President Xi, but he respected this country, he respected me. And he'll get out. And we can't let them run the Panama Canal. We built the Panama Canal. Should have never been given to Panama. We should have had it. but we gave it for $1. Think of it. They quadrupled. In one day, they lifted the fees, which are, pretty big, for these massive ships to go through, right? Rather than going around the Cape and through all the tremendous storms, such beauty, when it's beautiful stuff. But you didn't want to get caught in those storms. Those were storms that wiped out the biggest ships. And we go through the Panama Canal, we built it, and we gave it away for $1. Think of that, how stupid are we? We have done the stupidest things in this country. And now we have a president that can't put two sentences together, can't speak, can't walk, can't talk. I don't think he gets to the starting gate, but these people do miracles. I mean, he ran out of his basement, and you got away with that one because of COVID, so he sort of got away with it. They cheated on the election. But you have people that are very smart, but they're fascists and they're radical left lunatics, and they're destroying our country with the all-electric cars and the windmills all over the place, which, by the way, don't work, and they're most of them made in China. For the most part, they're made in China. Germany a little bit, but China. But you look at what's happening to our country, even no voter ID. I mean, why don't they want voter ID? There's only one reason they don't want voter ID, because they want to cheat. I mean, who doesn't want, the Democrat convention, the last one, they had voter ID that was this big. It looked like a prison card, this big on their chest. You walked in, they had your picture, your this, your fingerprint. They had everything. The most incredible voter ID I've ever seen. That was to get into the Democrat National Convention. But to get into vote, if you buy groceries, if you buy practically anything now, you have ID on a card, credit cards or otherwise.
But don't you think it's racist to have to show your ID?
Well, they probably say that. They use anything not to show ID, because voter ID is pretty simple. And we could go back, and we should go back to all paper ballots, voter ID, same-day voting. France did it. France had mail-in ballots, and it was terrible. Anytime you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have massive cheating on your elections. Anytime, but not just the presidential election. Anytime you have...
Isn't that the whole point of them?
Yeah.
So you can cheat?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's their whole point. That's their whole point. They want to cheat, yeah. They have to cheat because their policies are so bad that if they didn't cheat, they couldn't get elected. Who wants open borders? Who wants high taxes? Who wants high interest rates? Who wants to not be able to use a gas stove or have to drive an electric car, which, you have a 4-hour drive, but the car only goes an hour and a half, so you have to charge it. The happiest moment for somebody in an electric car is the first 10 minutes. In other words, you get it charged, and now for 10 minutes. The unhappiest part is the next hour, because you're petrified that you're not going to be found to another charger. People, I'm saying, I'm not knocking electric cars, they're fine. They're fine. But if people want to buy a gasoline car or a hybrid, hybrids are pretty good, actually, but they should be allowed to buy. They don't want to do any of this. So right now, California's in a big brownout because their grid is a disaster. The grid all over the country is sort of a disaster, but the grid in California. And yet, they want to have in a very short period of time millions and millions of cars going off that grid, essentially. It doesn't work.
So plug your car into a grid that's failing.
You should be able to buy an electric car. Electric cars could be fine if you drive short distances and you want to have, whatever, and you have plug-ins everywhere you go. They could be fine. But you got to have gasoline cars. You got to have everything. Let people buy everything. Now the new thing is your heating systems in the house. They don't want you to have a modern day heating system. They want you to use a heating system that will cost you at least $10,000 to buy and won't work very well. None of the stuff works as well. One of the things I did with EPA is you have states, many states, most of the states have so much water. It comes out of heaven, right? The water pours down and you have it. It's there. It's got to go wherever it goes, into the oceans, whatever. It's not like a big problem. Now, in some states, they have a problem. You have some desert areas and all, and for that, it's okay. But they have sinks where no water comes out. You turn it on, no water comes out. No water comes out of the shower. No water is allowed to go into the washing machine for your dishes or for your clothing or what. And I avoided all of that.
Wait, they have sinks where no water comes out?
Sure, you have restrictors. When I say no water, very little water. You want to wash your hands, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen this, and you turn on the sink and it's very little. Or you want to wash your beautiful hair, right? And you're standing under a shower. And the suds never go. The water comes out very slowly. I'm sure you've seen this. It usually takes place in new hotels and new homes.
Yeah, you take a drill and take the
They have
limiter out.
well, you can, but now they make it so you can't do that so easily. They have a restrictor. It's called a restrictor, and it restricts the water from coming out. So I ended all of that, and you have to see these. They let the water come out. You know what people do? They wash their hands like 5 times longer, or in the washing machine, they'll press for their, let's say the dishwasher. They'll press it, then they'll press it about 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
They'll end up using more water, and it still won't be very good. I met with the head of Whirlpool. They were practically going out of business during my administration, and they said to me, from Ohio, incredible, great state, I love Ohio, and they were really doing badly because people were dumping washing machines all over, mostly from South Korea, but also from China. And he was explaining it's just a terrible situation. I said, let me ask you, how's the quality? He says, we're better, but they are good enough quality. But, you know, of course he's going to say that, but, you know, they are better. He said, but they don't allow us. They're dumping these machines. They're cutting us in half. They're killing us. And on top of it, the government won't let us use water in our machines. I mean, he shows me like a quarter of a bottle of water. That's supposed to be washing clothing. And I freed it all up, and I put tariffs on these countries that were selling and the machines coming into the country. And that company went from all the washing machine companies, they make washing machines, they make dryers, they make all of the different machines that do this kind of work, including dishwashers. And they went from a disaster area to being just thriving.
But can I ask,
they love me in that part of Ohio.
Well, I bet they do, but why should EPA, no one at EPA was elected by anybody,
Yeah.
Why do they have the power to decide how much water your washing machine uses? Shouldn't Congress in a democracy get to vote on that?
Yeah, you could say that. They do things that are not very...
So how do you, that's my question, how do you, if you get elected again, you go back to Washington, how do you keep the agencies under control? How do you keep FBI and CIA specifically under control?
The way you do it, like I fired Comey, that was a big deal. You know, a lot of people said, and I fired him very early. Somebody said, oh, I wish you would have fired him. There was a real question about firing him. Anyway, you understand, because, you know, when they have a 10-year term, there is a question. I fired Comey. That was a great thing. If I didn't fire Comey, maybe I wouldn't be talking to you, or I'd be talking to you about real estate or something else other than politics, right? That was a coup, in my opinion. That was a very sick deal. That was the insurance policy. You remember the insurance policy? Oh, she's going to win, darling. She's going to win. But just in case she doesn't, we have an insurance policy. And insurance policy was what they were doing. And we caught them with that. That was a very important tweet or whatever it was, text. It was a big deal. That was a big deal. The insurance policy. She's going to win 100 million to 1. That's not good odds. At least they gave me 1, right? 100 million to 1. But just in case she doesn't win, we have an insurance policy. And everybody said, that's strange. That's strange. But we caught all of that because I fired Comey. Because when I fired Comey, it was like throwing a rock into a hornet's nest, into a nest of bees, and the place went crazy.
So when you were president, are you confident that you knew everything, say, CIA was doing around the world?
No, I'm not. It's a very interesting group of people. I had very good relationships, I thought, but I was a little surprised when I got out that, you know, things go on. Look, it's...
What were you surprised by?
I was surprised. I think it's some of the people. I was surprised that there was... I had a group of people. Look, we killed many, using the CIA, I have to say this, very bad actors. We were very good at it. You look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, bigger than Osama bin Laden. I mean, Osama bin Laden, but al-Baghdadi did ISIS, and he was rebuilding ISIS very strongly.
And that was the CIA that did that?
That was really us that did that.
Yeah.
That was really us that did that. And Soleimani was us that did that, not so much CIA. But we did some very good work with the CIA. What I started, you know, when I looked at the 51 intelligence agents saying that was the laptop from hell was Russia disinformation, when I took a look at that, I said, that's a horrible thing. They knew it wasn't. They knew it was not. And by the way, you're talking about cheating on the election? McLaughlin and Fabrizio, great pollsters, they said a thing like that plus other things meant anywhere from 10 to 17% of the vote would change.
Whatever happened to Mike Pence? You've always been nice to Pence. I've never heard you criticize Pence. You've defended him in public many, many times. He's out there attacking you. What is that?
So Mike wants to run for president. You got to understand, in my opinion, Mike Pence had the absolute right to send the votes back to the legislatures. The Democrats and everybody said, you don't have the right. In other words, what I said, is he a human conveyor belt? You mean if he finds fraud in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in any of these states, Arizona, he has to send them to Mitch McConnell, right? That's right, sir. Well, if he finds fraud, he has to? Yes, sir. I said, so he's a conveyor belt. Boom, put him in. I said, I don't agree with that. And we had some lawyers, not all, we had some lawyers that said, no, you do have the right to send them back to the legislatures to be rechecked. Because if you looked at what went on in Wisconsin, who, by the way, now agree with me, Wisconsin has been virtually, other than the fact they're not allowed to do anything statutorily, but Wisconsin has been, I mean, what they found is incredible. I mean, we won Wisconsin. But Mike Pence had the right, in my opinion, to send them back.
Do you ever talk to him now?
No, I haven't spoken to him in a long time. I was very disappointed in him. I didn't want to do what Thomas Jefferson did. Thomas Jefferson, it was Georgia. And it was, hear ye, hear ye, the great state of Georgia is not capable or allowed to tabulate their votes. And Thomas Jefferson, who was the vice president, said, is Georgia sure that they cannot tabulate their votes? Georgia is sure. He didn't send them back and have them redo it. He said, we will keep the votes of the great state of Georgia for Thomas Jefferson and his president. I didn't ask him for that. Could have done that too, but I didn't. I thought that would be turmoil. I asked him to send them back to his legislature, to the legislatures, you know, in Wisconsin, let's say.
But why didn't he? I mean, you'd worked together for 4 years. You're the president. He's VP. You say you're aligned on everything.
I think he got very bad advice. I really do. Now, let me tell you what happened. I sat there with a few people. I think his lawyer was in the room too. His lawyer was very much against it. There were other lawyers that felt you could do it. It was one of those things. I think you could have done it. I think you can always do something if you see fraud or if you see problems. But it's very interesting. So after the election was over, the rhinos got together with the Democrats and they redid the election, so you couldn't do it anymore. So then I called the people. I said, so in other words, you're saying I was right. You could do it. Yes, you could do it. In other words, they took the Voting Act and they redid it so the vice president no longer has the power to do what I said he could do. So when that happened, I said, wow. And you know, you'd look some of these Democrats in the eye and they'd say, he has absolutely no right to do it. And immediately after the election, they met rhinos, could name them all, and Democrats, and they approved legislation that takes away the right of the vice president to do it. So I said, so you're saying I was right. The vice president did have the right to do it, and they said, yes, he did.
So if you're saying they stole it from you last time, why wouldn't they do the same this time?
Oh, well, they'll try. They're going to be trying, yeah. And not only me, you know. Look, DeSantis is out. I think he's gone. So he was at a level. People have figured him out. He's gone. But if somebody else got in, other than me, they'll go at him just as viciously as they did me. These people are sick. They will go after them. And a lot of people say they won't be able to hold up. I do get credit for holding up quite well, I must tell you. I think it's...
How do you do that? How do you get indicted, you know, every week and stay cheerful?
I think it's a lot easier because I'm so high in the polls, because it means the people get it. The people see it's a fraud. The people see it, like this horrible district attorney from just a little while ago, from essentially Atlanta, that's Fulton County. She said, basically, I don't have any right to challenge an election. Well, what about Stacey Abrams? What about Hillary Clinton? What about all of these Democrats that are still challenging my election? The same people that are saying he's challenging an election challenged my election. And they did it with slates. They did it with all sorts of things. They were very bad about it. But basically, they're suing me, and they're saying, you don't have any right to challenge
What's going on, Jack? I saw you just dropped in. We have been watching this interview with Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson. This aired 2 nights ago, the same night as the GOP debates that we streamed in the last session. And, obviously since then, last night, Trump did his reporting in at the Fulton County, Georgia jail and checked in, got arrested, whatever you call it, and then is out on bail. So that's the status of things. And we're just catching up to watching this interview tonight. Hopefully you're doing all right. Just got home from work. Good stuff, man. Got to bring home the bacon. Got to build that experience. It's a slow process, but it's built every day, brick by brick.
And if you challenge an election, we're going to indict you and put you in jail. So what they're doing is they've weaponized, and don't kid yourself, the DOJ and Biden and the whole group, they're watching all of this stuff. They love the local stuff. The DA in Manhattan. Not only that, they put one of the DOJ top people into the Manhattan DA's office to run things. They don't even have a case against me. It's not even a case. Everyone says, even the Democrats say, you can't bring these cases. You have no case. The Attorney General or the District Attorney, Fannie Willis, in Atlanta, she's getting killed. Basically, she's saying Trump doesn't have the right to criticize an election. But you've been around long enough now. You've seen many elections criticized. I mean, Hillary Clinton goes crazy. Every time she talks, she says, he's not the president. Jimmy Carter said, he's not the president. Well, I am the president. Hillary Clinton called me, by the way, at 3:02 in the morning to congratulate me the night of the election.
Did her voice crack?
Well, her voice was, it's very different, I will say. I won't get into that. But
what do you mean?
Her voice was very different. Don't forget, they were all celebrating at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I came home and I said, I think we won. I felt we won because the rallies are so big. We'd go to Wisconsin and we'd go to Georgia. We'd go to different states. In Michigan, we'd have rallies. In Pennsylvania, we had 58,000 people in Butler. And I said, how are we losing this? How do you have a rally where you have from 50 to 100,000 people, many of them? I did 7 a day for a couple of days. That's a lot. That's a lot. These are big rallies too. And I didn't hold back. I didn't say, let's make them let's do abbreviations, right? But they challenged the stuff. Yeah. Hillary called me up and conceded. Now the word is that Obama said you have to do that. But she called up and totally conceded. But now, every time you see her on television, she's saying she's challenging the election.
Do you think?
So that would mean that she should be indicted, but that would mean also that Stacey Abrams in Georgia should be indicted because she still thinks she won the election for governor. She still thinks that. She's never recanted. And
do you think Stacey Abrams will be indicted for that?
No, of course not. She won't be. The Democrats don't get indicted for things like that. They don't get impeached. No, it's a different thing. With that being said,
yes,
I had great support when they did impeachment hoax #1 and impeachment hoax #2. Jim Jordan, the House was fantastic. And actually the Senate was very good for me, other than, Mitch McConnell. I think it's too bad I endorsed him. He was begging, he was going to lose that race, and I endorsed him, and he ended up winning the race because of my endorsement. He was down, he was going to lose to Amy McGrath. She was $90 million in cash, all set to go. She was leading by 3, he was going down. I did him a favor, and then 3-4 months later, he really wanted to impeach me. He's a bad guy. But if you look at what's going on politically, it's so interesting. The level of loyalty is different in politics than it is in normal life, I will say. With that being said, I've had great loyalty also. But the House was fantastic. The Senate was very good. They overrode Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, in my opinion, was trying to get senators to impeach me, especially for the second one. And on the first one, he acted very, very slow. He should have gone much faster. But Mitch McConnell wanted to, and the senators went up to him, guys that are subservient to him because he gives money. He gives them money. He gives them a lot of money. He raises some money and he gives it to them, and therefore they do what he said. That's the only form of leadership he's got.
So last question, if you're elected president again, what's your number one priority? When you ran last time, you said, I will build a wall. This time, your bottom line top promise to the
So
country?
you can do numerous things at the same time.
Of course.
But let's say number one is a border and taking hundreds of thousands of criminals that have been allowed into our country and getting them out and bringing them back to their country, Guatemala. By the way, not only the 4 countries that we think of as neighbors, all over the world. Last month, we had 149 countries represented. Think of it. We had 149 countries represented, Tucker, from places that many people never even heard of, coming into our country. And they're coming in from mental institutions, and they're coming in from prisons. They're emptying out their prisons all over South America. They're emptying out their mental institutions. Terrorists are pouring into our country. We have no idea. I had the strongest border in the history of our country, and I built almost 500 miles of wall. You know, they like to say, oh, was it less? No. I built 500 miles. In fact, if you check with the authorities on the border, we built almost 500 miles of wall. And I had another 200 that I was going to build. You know, it's like water, it seeks. And we're going to build another 200. We built it. It was all set to go. All they had to do was install it. It would have taken 3 weeks. And that's when I found out. I said, I think these people actually want open borders. The first thing I would do would be I would seal up the border good and tight, except for people that want to come in legally.
Do you think we're moving towards civil war?
There's tremendous passion and there's tremendous love. You know, January 6th was a very interesting day because they don't report it properly. I believe it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken before. And you know some of the crowds I've spoken before. And like July 4th on the mall, I think they had 1 million people there. But I think that the biggest crowd I've ever spoken before was on January 6th. And people that were in that crowd, a very, very small group of people, and we said patriotically and peacefully and patriotically, right? Nobody ever says that. Go peacefully and patriotically. But people that were in that crowd that day, very small group of people, went down there, and then there are a lot of scenarios that we can talk about. But people in that crowd said it was the most beautiful day they've ever experienced. There was love in that crowd. There was love and unity. I have never seen such spirit and such passion and such love. And I've also never seen simultaneously and from the same people such hatred of what they've done to our country.
So do you think it's possible that there's open conflict? We seem to be moving towards something.
I don't know, because I don't know what it, you know, I can say this. There's a level of passion that I've never seen. There's a level of hatred that I've never seen, and that's probably a bad combination.
Donald Trump, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
That is a bad combination, by the way.
Bad combination. Thank you.
All right, well, there you have it. That is how Donald Trump spent the hour that the rest of the 2024 Republican candidates spent on Fox News debating each other. They aired at the same time, and that was obviously intentional. Donald Trump explained why he didn't feel like he needed to be at the debates because he's leading the polls by 50%, basically a waste of his time. And he's spot on correct about that. And it does more than that, though. It illustrates the balance, or more like the ratio, of people who wanted to watch Donald Trump if they had to choose between that versus watching the GOP debates. Well, we know how that comparison or that ratio turned out. It turned out to be like 25 million viewers watched the Twitter video in the first, or when it went live. And I don't know how many viewers the Fox News debates got, but I can't imagine it was more than a couple million at most. I wonder if anybody has posted about that. Viewers from GOP debates. Oh, wow. Well, no, I don't trust that. I don't trust PBS. Sorry. How many people watch the GOP debate? Axios says 12.8. Fox News, CNN says 12.8. All right, well, one day ago. The thing is this Tucker interview now has 250 million views. So 12.8 watch the Fox News. It's hard to delineate between live viewership and views now to date a week later. Not even a week later. How many? 3 days? I just don't see 250 million streams happening on the Fox News website. Matter of fact, Fox News GOP debate full. Can we get a total viewership count? Or are they not going to show us that because it's kind of humiliating compared to Twitter? It looks like they're not going to show us that. Go figure. Go figure. But yeah, cumulatively for sure, he's had exponentially more viewership than Fox News. And I think even on the night that it was live, if Fox News got 12.8, the last I heard was Twitter had something like 25 million watching live. But that's a couple days ago, so I might be misremembering. I'm not sure. But that was worthwhile. I'm 175. I think that's probably like by yesterday or something like that. It's at 256 million right now. Right there, 256 views. Is there a way to see on Twitter how that's trended over time? I don't think so. Maybe if we go in actually into the tweets. Yeah, I doubt it. I remember watching Instagram over the last couple days, and every 12 hours I would get a new update saying Tucker Carlson interview with Donald Trump has 50 million. Now it has 100 million. Now it has 150 million. So it's hard to say when those snapshots are coming in, but I think it's pretty unquestionable. Even the polls are saying that Donald Trump is leading with 70% of the Republican vote, and then the next closest people are Vivek and DeSantis, who are both tied at like 13% or something like that. So it's not even remotely close. It seems to be a lock for Donald Trump on winning the candidacy. It's just a matter of whether or not they implement their COVID lockdown and thereby authorize the mail-in ballots again so that they can game the system and steal this election again. That's really the fundamental question. I don't think it's going to be a matter of we really need Republicans to go out and vote for Trump. Don't take this for granted. You guys need to go out and vote for Trump. But I'm saying I think we all know that and that we're all prepared and ready to do that and excited to do that. And this is why we say the serenity prayer, because we know what we can handle. We know our responsibility is to just go and get the votes, go and cast our votes. And also, people like me have a responsibility to try to get out there and spread the facts so that people can feel confident when they do cast that vote. Jack, do you think Trump can win centrist voters? I think the Bidenomics that we've seen play out ever since the lockdowns where they had to print a few $1 trillion, I think even the people who dislike Trump as an individual, this isn't true for all of them, I'm just saying for some of those people in the middle who consider themselves moderate or centrist, those people who maybe voted for Biden last time because they didn't think about just how badly they could destroy the economy with the whole Green New Deal agenda on top of the climate or the COVID lockdowns, on top of the open border. They didn't think that things would get as bad as they had. They just thought that, okay, maybe we get rid of the mean orange guy who says insensitive things. And hey, I like the whole gay marriage thing, so I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I like abortions and gay marriage, so I'm going to vote for a Democrat this time. Well, this time around, I think being on board with gay marriage and abortion, while that sounds great and virtuous to a lot of people you may know, and maybe you still personally support those things, the fact of the matter is if you're trying to buy a house under Donald Trump versus under Joe Biden, it's going to cost you 50% more money. And that's not a made up number. I know this because I bought a house recently. And the rise in interest rates for taking out a mortgage loan was 2.5% when Trump was in office. Nowadays, it's 7+% and climbing. And what that translates into, just for you guys to understand, like, what does that mean in terms of how much money I have to pay for a house? The average median income house under Trump, which is like, and I'm talking about maybe a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. So this is what you want if you're a husband and you have a couple of kids. Just your average blue collar household was something like $350,000 at an interest rate of 2.5%. And that translates into a monthly payment, your monthly mortgage payment of $1,700-ish, $1,700. That was how you could afford an average home while Trump was still in office. Fast forward into modern day Joe Biden era, where the interest rates have gone all the way up to 7%, plus the housing market, just the cost of houses has inflated 50%. To buy the exact same home 4 years later now would cost you $3,000 a month. So same home requires you to have not $1,700 for a mortgage, but $3,000 for the exact same house. So practically speaking, it doesn't, like, when you put it to somebody that way and you say, but, if you vote for Joe Biden or whoever else they put, you'll get to protect women's rights to have abortion and gay people can continue to have their gay pride parades and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, but I'm trying to have a family and I'd like to buy a house one day. I don't want to rent forever. I need to be accumulating wealth myself. I need to be self-investing in my future family, building equity in a home, achieving the American dream that we were all promised for our entire lives. Right now, that's just not a reality for a lot of people. And it's directly related. It all depends on if people can figure out that it is directly related to the politician you elect. The inflation isn't a fluke. It's not Russia's fault. This is the decision to embrace climate change full on and the economic destruction from inflation from printing all this money when you force these lockdowns that didn't even do anything. So people have to come to that conclusion to realize, okay, it can't be a Democrat again. If I ever want to get out of student debt or if I ever want to buy a home, I just have to vote for the conservative. And if that means voting for Donald Trump, so be it. There are going to be a large population of people who are forced into that mindset of, I don't want to vote for a Republican, but they're killing me. The inflation, I can't afford it. And I want to buy a house. And so it is what it is. We'll see. We shall see. Oh, any other takeaways from that interview? I really don't think so. It was entertaining and whatnot, but nothing like revelatory. It's funny just thinking that he does that interview knowing that the next day he has to do this humiliation ritual, walking through the jail, getting his mugshot taken, getting treated like a street thug. We don't like that. We don't appreciate that. And he talked about that during the interview, Jack. I think you may have joined too late for that, but earlier in that interview, he talked about how you asked the question how some moderates might be able to get shifted into voting for Trump based on the economy. That's true too. But when the facts are coming out on Twitter now not being so censored as it was in the last election cycle, and the facts being that Twitter was abused by the Biden administration to censor incriminating information about the Biden family with the Hunter Biden laptop, the Ashley Biden diary. People, it doesn't matter what political affiliation you have, if you discover the fact that these elections are actually being facilitated unfairly, that there is censorship happening that is clearly suppressing stuff for one candidate and turning up the volume on the other candidate, that means that you're not living the promise of American democracy, representative democracy that we're supposed to be having. Because you're supposed to be able to elect people with a fully informed data set, and the data set is being restricted intentionally by the government in cooperation with many of these corporations that previously we were all trusting to be of integrity. People thought that when they were watching CNN and MSNBC and ABC and reading the New York Times and the Washington Post, that they were reading, for the most part, journalism. objective reporting of the events. And through the COVID disaster, the scandemic, and through the election fraud, and through the Black Lives Matter ridiculousness, through the COVID lies about the vaccine, about the virus itself, about the efficacy of lockdowns, about the origin of the virus, the lies have stacked up to a point where people are starting to think, hey, don't you remember when Donald Trump said the news was fake? He called it fake news. And then all of the CNN and everybody I just mentioned said, you're not allowed to call us fake. That means you're stupid. If you think the news is fake, that just means you're stupid. What a silly, ridiculous concept to think that the news is fake. You have to be an idiot, like some kind of conspiracy theorist, to think that the news is fake. And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of people, those CNN loyalists, they sat there and said, they're right. Yeah, I mean, the news is real. Come on. They're going to put all this money into putting out fake news? Why would they do that? Why would they lie about the news? And so, when I say it out loud, it sounds funny and it sounds like we're making fun of these people because these things should be pretty obvious. Why would somebody lie on the news? I don't know, maybe to gain money or power or influence. The same reason people have been deceiving ever since humans arrived on this planet. Not technically, but after the fall of Eve there. From that point on, we have been deceptive towards each other, towards ourselves, and to God. And that is why you see God punishing America. We are not being authentic to God. We're lying openly about many, many things, about His creation, about humanity. We're lying about what is healthy for people. We lie about the nature of men versus women, saying that they're equivalent and interchangeable. We lie about the alleged fact that, the intellectual people say is a fact, that gender is some kind of spectrum, that one can become the other. We lie about that. And we lie about the reality of races, the fact that there are different races and the different races have different attributes at a biological level, including their physicality and their intellectual capacity, many other practices. These things are observably true, but we're told we have to lie and say that there is no difference between the races and that there is no difference between gender. So we are a society that is perpetually lying to the children who don't know otherwise. There's no protection for them. When these educators come into their life in the public school and tell them that men can get pregnant and that it's totally natural if you just want to try dating both genders. Just try it. Just try it. I'm not saying you have to, but if you want to, all the cool people do. Just saying. It's kind of like the cool thing to do to be bisexual or gay now. You don't have to do it, but if you want to be cool, that's the world we live in. That is the disgusting, rotten, fallen, sinful world we live in. And people are waking up to that, fortunately. The people that are waking up to that, to realizing like, hey, at some point evil took over. Like Christians, we knew this. We knew this when we were introduced to Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ told us that the world is inverted. The world is not like fundamentally good. The world is fundamentally evil and fallen and drawn to sin and a slave to sin. We knew this from the get-go, but people who are not Christian don't see the world that way. They think most people are pretty good and they're just doing their best and they make mistakes and sometimes they misunderstand, and you just have to give everybody grace and let everybody figure these things out. However, they might figure them out, hopefully, if they figure them out, but be okay with it if they don't figure them out. It's like, no. None of that is true. There is a definitive moral way to live life that is handed down directly to us from God. It's documented in the Holy Bible. It is evidenced through the life of Jesus Christ. So that's the starting point. We construct how things are supposed to be, and by things, I'm talking about the nature of men and women and how they relate to each other, the nature of how men and women as a society are supposed to be self-governing for the most part via the unit of the family. families creating communities, and holding each other accountable to the word of God, not to a installed government of a nation or of a state or of a global government. We Christians know that. We Christians know that being governed by a state is not the experience that God wants us to have. He wants us to be governed by Him, by what His commandments say, what His Son showed us while He was here on earth. And so people are waking up to the fact that, holy shit, society is like fully corrupt. I send my kids to school and they get introduced to gay anal sex in 3rd grade. Whoa, I had no idea that was happening. I had no idea that evil was out there. And wait a minute, why did I even learn this information in the first place? Oh yeah, it's because they locked down all of society. They told me I couldn't go to church and I couldn't go to the gym. They told me that I was evil if I didn't wear a face mask that I know doesn't work. And they start stacking up all of these variables that point towards, oh, things actually are bad. Things are not naturally good. So, the Great Awakening is happening at different levels. There's several of them to be had. There's the red pill, and that's kind of the relation of men being leaders, women being subordinate and submissive to the leadership of men. That's essential, no matter even if you're living under a religious framework or not. That's the red pill. Red pill also relates to just general levels of corruption, man's draw toward greed and status. Some of that's red pill related, but the red pill is the first thing everybody swallows. And then they have to come to the, in preference of order, I would say the Christ pill needs to be first. But this is kind of how it's playing out, is that people are getting red pilled first based on the economy and based on the weird situation happening between men and women. And then when they figure out, wait a minute, classical gender roles, as I was always told, like the Bible says that men and women should do this and that. And I never really wanted to get on board with the religion thing because it feels like a cult or it feels judgy. But it turns out the stuff that's in the Bible, turns out that is true, the whole gender thing. And it also turns out that the whole being against homosexuality thing, that's not just like some random bigoted impulse. That's actually based on genuinely loving people and wanting the best for them. And every longitudinal study indicates that homosexuality has far higher odds than heterosexuality when it comes to self-harm, depression, suicide. And that's just homosexuality. We know that all of those attributes get even worse when you start talking about transgenderism. And so if these things are just objectively true, you can watch society and learn that they're true. Once again, you find that, like the red pill with gender, you find that, wait, the Bible was saying that homosexuality was wrong this entire time. So it's like, God knows maybe better than whatever today's society knows. Are we starting to figure that out? And that leads to people getting Christ pilled. That leads to people actually sitting down and reading, what did Jesus actually say is best for us? How did he live his life? And what happened to him? Who were the forces who were opposed to Jesus? Oh man, now that's a big pill to swallow. Oh man, once you become a Christian, and your mind opens a little bit to, okay, if Jesus Christ stood for this, who were the bad guys in the New Testament again? Who were the people who were constantly attacking Jesus and calling him evil things, utilizing slander and deceit to get him arrested, tortured, eventually nailed to a cross? Oh, you get that pill after you get Christ pilled. That pill, the JQ pill, comes along. And then the final pill, I think the final pill is the white pill. That's the one where you have to have done all of the other work first. You have to know the red pill stuff about men and women and the economy. You have to have Christ in your life. You have to, what was the other one? Oh, you have to know the opposition of Christ. You have to have identified the enemy. And then you figure out who is the enemy. And okay, so we identified that. That's the JQ. And then you look at how does the enemy attack us? What do they use to attack us? Demographic erosion, cultural erosion. Demographic erosion meaning that they go into whatever nation and they subvert the national identity and the demographic makeup, the genetic makeup of that nation. And so that leads you to the white pill, where you figure out, wait a minute, I never thought about it, but there might be a reason why European countries look a certain way and function a certain way and have had such immeasurable success in the last 500 years as compared to all of the other nations. Maybe there's something to be learned from that. That it's not a matter of superiority, and it's not a matter of like being a chosen people like the Jews like to put themselves according to their own beliefs. Nothing to do with any of that. It's simply an observation that the races are clearly operating in different ways, intellectually, physically, and culturally. And it turns out the way the European race operates, when left to its own devices and it's not forced to live amongst other cultures, creates a society that's very different than when other ethnicities are left about themselves to organize their own culture and society. And that's the white pill. And that's the one people seem to still be slowly approaching. They figured out the corruption in the government, and they figured out men and women are better than men and men, or women and women, or men becoming women. And they're swatting away the insults of homophobic, transphobic, bigot, yeah. They're saying, look, you can call me whatever you want. I know that it needs to be man and woman as the nuclear family. That's what's required. It just is what it is. And that's the kind of shell that you end up forming, where it starts out by learning, okay, I can't continue to worry about being called a misogynist because I said that men can't get pregnant. I'm like, your words are starting to become worthless because I know my arguments are factual and founded in very simple observation, but also in the Bible and also according to science for the last thousands of years. And so you become immune to the gender-based slander, and then you become immune to the racial slander, and then you become immune to the religious slander of being called anti-Semitic, which is also somewhat racial slander. And you eventually just become immune in general to all forms of these, turns out, meaningless insults that you've been scared of your entire life. Oh, I can't use the word faggot because somebody's going to call me a homophobe. I can't use the N-word, and I honestly don't use the N-word. I'm not one to push the envelope needlessly. But it's the same concept in terms of why can't we again? What is the problem here? Is the insinuation that there is going to be so much violence from me using the N-word that it's not worth freedom of speech? Well, you're just confessing to me that you think that black people are uncontrollably violent. If you think that me using the N-word is inevitably going to cause such a violent backlash that I shouldn't use it, then you are saying that black people are uncontrollably violent. Sounds a little racist to me, don't you think? It's like when people say, oh, I bet you wouldn't say the things you say in front of a black guy in real life or in the room with a black guy. It's like, well, why wouldn't I? Because he would punch me? Wouldn't that kind of prove the point? Are you stupid? Are you racist? Pretty silly stuff. So Jack says, I was red-pilled weird. First I learned about race realism, then the JQ. Then in S, I came back to Christ afterward. Interesting. Yeah, I guess I kind of just described my own path, and I assume that that's the path most people go down, but you're right. It's probably much more organic than I assume it is. I mean, it's true that a lot of people are Christian from their youth. You know, they just grew up in the church, or maybe they were exposed to a miracle sooner than I was exposed to a miracle. And so they just grew up knowing that God was real the entire time. And maybe that led to them being red pilled onto the JQ sooner than myself. Maybe they knew that having 50% of the government be Jewish, despite the fact that they're only 2% of our nation and they're obviously not Christian, maybe that's a problem for us. Maybe the fact that they run the media industry, including the news, including all the record labels, including the film production studios, including the newspapers, maybe if they're not Christian and they're running the majority of those organizations, maybe that's not a good thing for America. We can go down the JQ, and it should just be a thought experiment. It shouldn't be a taboo thing to talk about. I shouldn't have to worry about my platform of now, by the way, over 800 followers. Shout out to all you guys giving me the love lately. It shouldn't be a worry on my mind about, is this risking my career to talk about the fact that there is no such thing as Judeo-Christian culture? There's one or the other. Those things are paradoxical. Christians call the synagogue of Satan. Jesus Christ himself called the synagogue of Satan. Those who call themselves Jews are really the synagogue of Satan. Why did he say that in Revelations? Seems like an unusual thing to say to our partners. Why did he say it twice? And why did he call the same people a brood of vipers twice? What interesting questions Christians should consider on top of the economic data and how these things stack up when you actually examine them closely. The financial industry, the education, the Ivy League schools, 8 out of 9 of them having a certain ethnic or religious representation at the top. Yeah. Red pilled by an atheist who treated National Socialism almost like a religion itself. Interesting. I've been feuding with an atheist in the comment section of one of my Instagram videos where he's calling God Santa Claus, and he's talking about Pascal's wager. I'm being patient with him. I'm not insulting him. I'm trying to help him out. But I told him is that, look, dude, you're running out of time. Okay? Your profile picture looks like you're probably 40 years old. You're sitting around being a cringe atheist, calling God Sky Daddy. You're talking about the Bible as a book of fairy tales. You're talking about how there's been 3,000 gods, and yeah, sure, your one God just happens to be the true one. You know, this is all, I call it the atheist bingo card. This is the stuff they say thinking that they're really intellectual and that they've arrived at some kind of brilliant epiphany about, turns out God isn't real. Can you guys believe this? Turns out that this entire God concept of there being a higher being, something above humans, turns out that's not even true. Like, okay, halt the press, big shot, halt the press. Human history, ever since it's begun, in documented human history, every culture has said that there is a God. You're the one that pointed out 3,000 different ones. The fact that it was eventually clarified as to who the real God is, well, that is the Bible. It tells you how God spoke to his people, used them as a vessel, and established a new covenant with how we're supposed to stay in perpetual communication with him. That's the story of the Bible. That's the connection of the Old Testament to the New. But yeah, I'm sure you went to college and you learned that God isn't real. And so joke's on all of us. Joke's on all of us who are happier and more fulfilled and more full of courage and willing to die for the things we stand for willing to die to protect children, willing to die to protect the sanctity of marriage. Joke's on us. Exactly. Christianity is not a uniquely white religion. That's kind of the whole point of Jesus Christ coming and breaking down the racial barrier of the Jews thinking that they are God's chosen race forever and ever for all time. God chose to communicate through Moses and obviously all of the rest of the prophets from Abraham all the way down so that there could be a documented history of his wishes for his people being humans. He spoke to the Jews to say, here is how I want my humans to live. Right now, you are my chosen vessel for that communication. And one day, a Messiah is going to come and establish a new rule, a better understanding. And so they sat around and talked about that prophecy and who that Messiah would be and how he was going to arrive. And by talked about, I do mean talked about. They speculated. They did their best interpretation of who this Savior might be one day. This conqueror that's going to come in and just knock over all of the governments who are trying to oppress the Jewish people and enslave everybody for the sake of the Jewish race. That's who they thought the Messiah was going to be. Turns out that it had nothing to do with race at all. That God wanted all human beings, all human life to know him personally and to love him and to follow his directions because he knows that that's what's the healthiest, most fulfilling experience for us as humans. He created us. He knows what's best for us. So Jesus comes down and says, sorry, but this whole concept of us Jews, being that Jesus was a Jew, us Jews being the exclusive people of God is not true. We have to move forward from that. Now, you can either choose to follow me as God here on earth, or you can stay in your old beliefs of this racial ethno-religion that you guys have. If you do that, then you're not worshiping God. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. So whoever it is that you're going to worship from now on, it's not God. Whatever you're doing, call it whatever you will, call it Judaism. Other people are eventually going to call it Buddhism. Other people are eventually going to call it Hinduism. The pagans are going to choose a zillion different gods to worship. They're going to choose 3,000 according to this atheist online. That's all good and well. It's all the same category of false idols and Satan creating various deceptions into luring people into false religions or a religion, meaning non-religious, denying that God exists, as atheists do. So, Jack, the issue with considering the Aryan race as inherently superior, you have to ask the question of superior in what regard, what attribute? Because if you measure IQ, Asians score higher than whites on average. So if you're talking about intellectual capacity, clearly, according to IQ studies, if you believe those, then white people can't be supreme. If you look at physicality and muscularity, white people are not supreme. Africans would easily outshine them. And so there is no racial superiority. This is why anytime I'm called a white supremacist, I just have to roll my eyes because I don't think these things are true because you would have to establish what is the criteria for being supreme. I don't know. Would it be more intellectual, more physically capable, more this, and this? Do you have to be 4 out of 5? Do you have to be 5 out of 5? It's easy to put a label on something that you don't like because it's uncomfortable for you, which is the concept of the races simply being different in different capacities. That's too uncomfortable for some people. So they just say, if you pick out any part of Europeans and say that somehow that's better than other ethnicities, that makes you a white supremacist. And it's like, well, I just said that I like the culture that we create. And the culture that we create is the sum of our genetic impulses, whether that's how violent we are, how intellectual we are, how physically capable we are, how patient we are. I mean, there's a million different things that go into behavioral temperament that vary across races that doesn't make one more or less superior than the other. So this is why white supremacist is just like, it's a stupid label that doesn't mean anything. I think the Aryan race, if you want to call it that, the European race, as I said, it creates the culture that I prefer. There are people who love bongo drums and tribal rituals who would probably prefer an African culture. So if you're going to call them black supremacist or African supremacist, fine by me. I don't give a shit. That's just somebody expressing their cultural preference. That is crazy, though, that the person who red pilled you was an atheist white supremacist. Mainly the white supremacist part. The atheist part I can believe, because if you look at people like Andrew Tate or Bronze Age pervert or people who are Muslim who are red pilled, they get it. They get the importance of gender roles, the reality of the difference between genders, and the difference between genders means different things for the economy, the sexual marketplace, as they call it. You don't have to be religious to understand those things. If you are religious, it'll help you understand those things much sooner. You know, if you look at the Muslim faith or the Christian faith, they lay out the differences between the genders very plainly. To be an atheist and to get red pilled on the genders, that usually takes like a little bit of just harsh reality of being unsuccessful in the dating world or something like that, where I shared a video the other day that pointed out something very important. And it was a guy talking to a woman, asking her, she's a young woman in the dating world, and he says, at 20 years old, who is more valuable in the sexual marketplace, meaning, you know, who has the most attractiveness to them, a 20-year-old woman or a 20-year-old man? Who's more valuable in the dating marketplace? She goes, 20-year-old woman. Obviously, we all know that's true. Hopefully, we don't have to get into great debate about that. I know liberal deconstructionists would want to say, well, what is it about the woman and what is it about the man that makes them more attractive? How do you really define that? Well, there's some people that, and they'll do that. They'll go into the Talmudic practice of deconstructing to the 9th degree, to where you're having some peripheral conversation that is no longer even threaded to the reality on average that we all know a good-looking 20-year-old woman, her career experience, her education, anything else she might acquire in life later on is irrelevant. A good-looking 20-year-old woman can directly mingle with people who are far more successful than her. She can marry into a life of never having to work again. The world is a 20-year-old female's oyster. She has opportunities everywhere in front of her. And the young man who's at 20 years old, do you think a 20-year-old woman is looking at him as a future provider and protector at his 20-year-old self? Or do you think that 20-year-old woman is going to see a man who's 30 and plus, or 25 and plus, who already has the high income, who's already gone through enough dating to actually want to settle down and commit loyally to one woman? These are just natural advantages. So a woman in her 20s is more valuable. The same is true at 25, but what you see is once you ask the question, who's more valuable in the dating marketplace at 30 years old, things start to look a little different, because fertility and the ability to have a large family, that window starts to close rapidly at 30 years old. It already started closing in the mid-20s for a woman. It closes even faster between 30 and 35, and by the time you reach 40, that window to have children is basically over, without introducing substantial risks of miscarriage and birth defects. And so a woman knows as she hits 30 to 35 to 40, her value is dropping like a rock, whereas a man's value continues to grow from 30 to 35 to 40 to 45 to 55. You get it. And everybody knows this has always been true. This has been true since biblical times. It's still true today. But we try to deny these things. And what I was explaining as it relates to atheism, though, is a lot of young men will have to suffer through dating all the way up to 30 years old before they become the catch. Women are the catch the first 10 years that they're dating, maybe 15, if you want to say they start dating at 15, which they shouldn't, but let's just say they did. Women have the obvious upper hand for the first decade of their romantic life, maybe even 15 years. And that upper hand, unfortunately, has the effect on young men of becoming very jaded and saying all the hot girls are dating older, more successful guys. It's not fair, whatever. And so they get a bit red-pilled about the genders being self-interested, and there actually being an obvious structure to them that relates to the biological nature and restrictions of each gender. They get red-pilled onto how that works. So if you're curious about that guy's logic, a book called Might is Right was one of his favorites. Also, Hitler's Table Talk. I don't talk to him anymore, though. He says I'm cucked because I'm not as radical as he is. Well, man, as an atheist, we say that nobody is free of worship. Everybody worships something. And so for atheists, it's all about identifying what have they replaced Jesus with. We worship Jesus Christ. Every atheist worships something different. And so you identify that, it helps to really understand who they are as an individual. But my friend, to put your life in the hands of Jesus Christ is absolutely not cucked. It's the most based thing you can do. It's the most important thing you can do. I know it's the most important thing I did with my life. It's what makes me happy every single day. It's irreplaceable. So sleep well, my friend. The atheist, I guarantee you, is not sleeping as well as you are, knowing that your position in God's kingdom is already assured. Knowing also that everything you've ever done wrong in your history has already been redeemed. These atheists out there who maybe think that some kind of like karma exists or that the things they have done wrong, they punish themselves. I remember when I was agnostic, the things that I did wrong, I punished myself for years. I would not let them go. I would stew in my own regret. Because if there is no God and there is no offer of forgiveness from Jesus Christ, how do you ever get forgiveness? It's pretty important. I think there's a common thread amongst atheists and people who are a-religious to really struggle with guilt and regret. And it's so obvious. It's like, yeah, it's because you didn't take the one offer that actually works to forgive everything bad that you have ever done and that has happened to you. The offer is out there. It's out there 24/7. Oh, my poor dog. He's over here breathing hard. It's so hot in my office, you guys. I gotta wrap up this stream and get him out of here. He's a little pug. He can't take it. Gilbert, do you want to come say hello? Come here, Gilbert. Hey, bud. Come here. You can hear him breathing from across the room. Oh, there you go. There you go, big shot. There you go. Yeah. Are you hot? Do you want to go downstairs and get some water? Okay, big time. We'll get you downstairs and we'll get some food in us. This is my baby boy, you guys. I am a serious dog dad. I love him to pieces. He's my little angel. So yeah, it's too hot for him in here. It's over 100 degrees here in Alabama today. And so I'm in an upstairs extra bedroom. And so all the heat has risen to this room of the house. And I have this big ass LED ring light that makes it even hotter. I have two fans on. I have the ceiling fan, I have a desk fan, I have the air conditioning on, and I'm wearing a damn tank top, and it's still quite hot in here. I'm sweating, and poor Gilbert is panting. So we're gonna wrap this up. Thanks for joining me for watching that interview. It was definitely entertaining. We'll say that. Trump still has it. He still got the mojo. So long as they aren't allowed to steal the election, he'll get the votes. We have to go out and vote, but I think we should feel a little bit better having seen such a good showing from him during that interview and such a irrelevant showing at the debate stage, including the results of all the polling showing that all these other candidates are basically irrelevant. It's either they get him in jail, Trump wins, or Trump would have won, but they stole it. Like, those are the only outcomes. It's one of those three now. And I know liberals would say, well, that sure is convenient because even if he loses and we don't arrest him, you're going to say it's because we cheated in the election. It's like, sorry, but that's just the truth. We know that. We know that with the mail-in ballots last year, Trump got more votes than he did in 2016. He couldn't have done a better job. Let's close with a prayer. Great idea, Jack. Thanks for the reminder. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for these couple hours we got to spend together today, my brothers and sisters in faith, and anyone else who jumped in who necessarily hasn't found you yet. We welcome them as well. We actually heard from that one person earlier who said that they were just recently redeemed in Christ, which is a huge celebration for that individual and for all of us who follow you. So we're grateful. We know that this is true. It's happening all around us, that people are coming to you on a daily basis and understanding that you are everything you told us you were, the way, the truth, and the life. We know that you are the only way for us to have a relationship with the Father, and we are grateful for you for extending that relationship to us. We're grateful for your perpetual forgiveness of our sins that we struggle with on a daily basis. We ask that you can help us reduce those in frequency to the point that they're no longer something we even have to be guilty about because we've stopped doing them. We love you, Lord. It's in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right. Great evening tonight. I enjoyed it. I'll be back with you guys probably tomorrow. I got a weekend on my hands. I don't have a lot going on. I might hang out with my parents. It's just oppressively hot down here. So while I like the idea of hanging out by the pool tomorrow, it's so damn hot. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. It's kind of easier to sit in the air conditioning in front of a fan. But there's always good stuff to watch with you guys. We'll see about what's in the news cycle. I mean, there's not much more. Like, all the big things for the week already happened. We had the debate, we had Tucker's interview, and we had Trump actually getting arrested and mugshotted, all that stuff. Now that all that's happened, I think the news is going to be pretty quiet. But that doesn't mean we can't watch some Jared Taylor stuff and become more educated and articulate with the causes we stand for. So I will see you guys again later this weekend. I'm not sure Saturday or Sunday, but if you don't already, add me on Telegram so that you'll know when I'm going live. And I'll stay in touch with you with Instagram stories and post on my Telegram as well. Till next time, see you guys again soon. Bro, it's so hot. So hot, man. Brutally hot. Brutal, man.
Where are you going? Where are you going? Oh. So fast. You were so fast.